real estate. It's the Laura and Bill show today.
Jackie's our strong support.
Trusted producer.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So let's start with the government shutdown. How is that affecting real estate?
Yeah, you and Jackie know better than I. For the deals that most of my clients are doing, it's not having any effect because they're commercial deals, non-residential. Just I've got a
They're not
couple.
federally
And
insured.
plus, I have a couple large residential deals going on right now, but it'll be interesting to see when I'm supposed to close on October 30, and we'll see whether or not they're able to do it as a result of the government shutdown.
Okay. Well, it is slowing the loan process down. So if
And it
you've
will
got
get worse.
it
Yes.
will if
Yeah.
it
The longer
continues.
it-
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it will get. So if somebody is counting on closing on a certain time, I wouldn't count on that right this second.
What specifically is slowing it down?
Anything that's federally insured,
Okay.
FHA.
What world we live in.
Very difficult right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very difficult and really unnecessary, but that's a political issue, and let's avoid that this
Yeah.
morning.
Right.
sure.
And rural development loans will probably they're already take a long time. They'll take longer.
Those are the rural development.
Rural, I
loans
know,
you're
I
talking-
always
No,
say
no,
it
no, no,
wrong.
no.
So
I
thanks for
wasn't
pointing
correct-
that
I
out.
wasn't
Thanks
correct-
for pointing that out to our
wasn't-
audience.
I wasn't correcting you. I was
I thought
doing
I thought you said rural.
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
I wasn't correcting
We can
you.
always replay this to find
I
out.
wasn't.
Good.
Yeah.
Greg, I want to make it clear on
What
the
was
record.
the-
I was not correcting her this morning.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The man who would rather correct. I
Yeah,
won't
that-
finish it.
Yeah, all right.
Anyhow.
All right, so the government shutdown slowing things down. What else are we talking about today?
Well, you had I've got a client that's looking at a property that's gone through a fire.
Right.
and it was-
I have one going on right now too.
And
I'm
you-
very, very, very expensive residence.
Coincidentally, you had mentioned that, and so I had asked you yesterday, what is someone supposed to do when there's been damage to a house that's been covered by insurance or maybe not covered by insurance? This one was covered by insurance.
Exercise extreme caution in terms of performing due diligence to investigate the condition of the property, whether or not the property has been properly repaired or whether it was simply a cosmetic redo. This includes going to the local municipality's building department, or if the local municipality does not have its own building department, going to the county building department, pulling the files, taking a look to make sure that all appropriate permits were lifted, that the inspections all came through with flying colors, having, if it was a major fire, having even a structural engineer, in addition to a home inspector, go through the property. It really, there's a great case decided, I want to say 8 or 10 years ago in Michigan, in which this was the identical circumstance. The purchaser moved in, wasn't told about some of the hidden things that were not repaired, charred rafters in the roof, things like that. And so it really highlights the need to exercise extra caution.
Well, we were told by the neighbor yesterday that it was just smoke damage, but the whole inside of the house was done.
Well, smoke damage is still a big issue. You don't know what kind of residual effect it has. And whoever talked to the neighbor was doing the right thing too. That's exactly what I tell my clients is go talk to the neighbors. See if there, and this is true whether or not there's been a fire or any other damage to the property, because the neighbors will often tell you that yes, there is a problem in the neighborhood with respect to flooding every spring. Or, oh yeah, we know our neighbor really well and they've had this huge problem with a roof leak that they can't seem to get repaired. Go talk to the neighbors and you can find out a wealth of information.
Well, this particular neighborhood has church bells that sound off.
That's another thing.
And I've shown a couple of homes in the same neighborhood and to this same couple, and each time those church bells were going off, and they are loud. I mean, nothing against church bells, but.
Right, but it's a circumstance that somebody may
Really?
be interested in, yeah.
Really?
You wouldn't, I would not have thought about it except for how long they rang while I was showing this particular
How long
house.
did they ring?
It seemed like a long time.
Well,
Now, I'm sure it was only
A minute?
a minute,
Okay.
but it seemed,
A minute would be long.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would be, right.
yeah. So
So that annoyed you?
Well, it
It might trouble some people.
Yeah, well, and they were concerned about it. Does it go off every hour?
Right.
In this particular church, the neighbor told us he thinks they go off at noon and 6 o'clock. But he doesn't even hear them anymore, for the most part. And I think that's true in most situations. Once you move into a place, if there's something unique to the area that you weren't used to from your previous location, you do get used to it. I mean, it took us a
Yeah,
while.
but it is,
Bill,
but it is troublesome.
Won't a regular inspection detect most of that, or no?
A qualified home inspector may pick up on it, but the home inspection will actually tell you that it's not doing any invasive testing. It's only doing a visual inspection, and so to the extent that it's been drywalled over or it's in an inaccessible area, the home inspector has a disclaimer saying, we are not inspecting for that particular item. And so the inspector and it's no fault of the inspectors, because they can't do invasive testing without the consent of the seller. Seller's not going to give consent to do invasive testing, which is, poking holes in drywall and things like that.
Right.
And so it's really essential that you do more than simply get a home inspector, that you actually check the records. And if there is any question at all about the nature of the extent of the damage and the quality of the repair, you go to whoever is the expert that may be necessary to determine whether or not it's been satisfactorily repaired. It could be a flooding issue, so now I need a foundation person to come out and check out the foundation. And the home inspector will tell you they're not structural, or he is not a structural engineer, and they need to go to the qualified professional.
So the seller's not liable to tell you,
Well, in this
3 years ago we had a major or minor fire?
Well, in this particular instance, it's on the seller's disclosure statement.
Okay.
And I would think any responsible seller would want to
But
disclose
they're not liable,
that. They
are they,
wouldn't
Bill?
want.
You want me to answer the question?
Sure, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The answer is, in Michigan, there is no general duty of disclosure of latent defects on the part of a seller. That changes in three respects. One, if it is a hazardous condition, the seller has an absolute duty to disclose it. Two, if the seller knows of a defect and has taken active steps, or has taken steps to actively conceal it from disclosure by a visual inspection, the seller is liable for failing to disclose. Other than that, there is no duty to disclose, except now in Michigan, as of when would he adopt seller's disclosure, 88 or thereabouts. Whenever we adopted the Seller's Disclosure Act, where you have a residential property for sale, less than 4 family or fewer, the seller must give a seller's disclosure statement, or runs the risk that the buyer can back out until the day of closing. The seller's disclosure statement requires the disclosure of all of these defects, even though it may not be specifically enumerated on the seller's disclosure statement. There's a Court of Appeals case in Michigan that says there's a general duty on the part of the seller to disclose all latent defects of which the seller is aware. Now, if it's a patent defect, if it's something that could be found upon a visual inspection by a qualified home inspector, not just by the purchaser, but Michigan law, there's a Court of Appeals decision on this too, that says that the standard is not what a normal buyer could discover upon a visual inspection, but that a buyer of a residential property in Michigan has a duty to hire a qualified inspector to do that inspection. And if the inspector couldn't find it, the seller failed to disclose it on a seller's disclosure statement, and the seller knew about it, the seller's liable. But the onus is really on the buyer to hire a good inspector, have the inspection done to verify what the condition is.
And if I, as a buyer, say, no, I'm not going to pay for a home inspection, and that happens more often than not, I always tell them, first hire someone you're willing to sue, because if they make a mistake, you can go after them. If it's your brother or uncle or sister or somebody doing the inspection, you're less likely to go after them.
You got no remedy later on, right?
Right. But so if the seller says no, or the buyer says no, I don't want to do a home inspection, and they find something that was patent, what happens?
Well, you mean
And I
maybe
think
the buyer before the closing?
No, after the closing,
Oh.
they move in. There's something that could have been discovered as a result of a home inspection. Can I sue the seller?
No, generally speaking, the purchasers, there's a legal term of ours called SOL, you're sure out of luck. with respect to going after the
I love it
seller.
when you laugh, Greg.
Because you failed to exercise
that
due
one.
diligence, right, okay?
Yeah.
So, no, and I'd be more candid with a buyer who refused to spend the amount for a home inspector. I'd say you're absolutely nuts, and I have no way of protecting you. Now, I said this before, though, you gotta hire somebody that you're willing to go after for professional negligence or malpractice, but you gotta read the contract with the home inspector because
yeah.
it generally contains a limitation of liability to the amount that you paid for the inspection. So if the fix is $20,000, but you paid $350 for the home inspection, the most you're gonna get out of the home inspector is $350. And you won't be able to go after the seller because it wasn't the seller's fault for failing to disclose it, it was the inspector's fault for failing to find it. So you gotta get rid of the limitation of liability.
Fire is interesting though, because you're always trying to cover up a fire, right?
Well, you're
Damage.
trying to repair it, you're not
Right, I
trying to
wouldn't say
cover it
cover.
up. I think you're trying to
Okay.
repair the
That's
fire
kind
damage.
of
Yeah,
cynical.
That's the way I
really
look
cynical.
at
Do
it.
you?
Well,
No, I'll tell you, this house that.
I mean, if you have smoke damage, fire damage.
These
A lot of you
people-
gotta pull, and sort of, if you cannot get rid of the odor and the smoke, I mean, you literally replace the drywall, whatever it may be, that
Oh,
is
right.
now affected by it. That's not a cover-up, that's actually a replacement, a
Yeah,
repair.
and most of the time, if an insurance company is involved, they're gonna require a licensed individual, correct?
Well, no, it's usually the mortgage company that has the greatest interest. The insurance company doesn't really care. The mortgagee really cares to make certain that its collateral is properly repaired. And so it will typically, when there is a fire, there is a loss, the insurance policy provides that the money technically goes to the mortgagee, and it's the mortgagee's decision as to whether or not it's going to be applied to repair or whether they're going to simply total the property, et cetera, and what's going to happen to those proceeds. But they should end up doing repair, but the mortgagee is going to have some control over it.
Yeah, and these people, nice house, I mean, this is a high-end finishes.
Same with the one I'm involved in at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah,
So they disclosed it.
they disclosed it, I'll pull if my people decide to write an offer, I'll pull the records from the city, I'll find out who the contractor was that did the work, because a lot of times, if you know the contractor, then you often know whether it was quality finish or not.
And you can even talk to the contractor.
Right.
Yeah, but you just want to exercise extreme caution if there is any sort of damage. And in my case as well, the seller disclosed it on the seller's disclosure statement. We got all the permits, got all the inspection reports, so and things checked out. So we're moving forward with that particular deal.
So a regular inspection
And that-
may or may not pick that up.
Again, it's on the seller's disclosure statement, so the home
So they'll look
inspector
for
is
it.
really looking for things which would be.
Yeah, but it
affected
doesn't
by a
have to
fire.
be, right?
In the seller's disclosure statement, you would have to disclose the fact that there had been that kind of.
And I always tell
damage.
people, more information.
Yeah, well, a fire, and even though
Okay.
the seller says it's been completely repaired or replaced, my advice to the seller is to still disclose
buyer?
it to the seller.
Oh,
Is
okay.
to still put it on the seller's disclosure statement, say, hey, look, we had a fire in 2008, but the fire damage has all been repaired or replaced, we have all the receipts, we have all the permits, et cetera. Because you don't want to run a risk as a seller that you've made an incomplete disclosure, because Michigan law also says on the seller's disclosure statement, it's not only you must make disclosure, but you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't sort of slide off what the truth is.
I always tell people, the more information on the seller's disclosure, the better.
The less problems you're gonna have
Right.
later on.
If there was a leak in the roof, you fixed it, say what it was, say
Right.
why it was, and
Right, and many
Describe it.
sellers, because the issue becomes later on, the seller says, never discloses a defect, and the seller really didn't do a complete repair. Now, they've got a case for active concealment. They came in and simply covered over the damage instead of actually repairing it.
so will that fire or any damage like that stay with the house? So let's say my buyers buy this house. 5 years from now, they turn around and sell it. Do they have to disclose that fire despite the fact it didn't happen while they were living in that
Doesn't
house?
matter whether it happened when they were there or not, they have knowledge of it. The fact that they weren't there when the fire occurred is irrelevant. They're gonna disclose it when they sell 5 years from now.
They have to?
They should.
They should, yeah.
Yeah, they
They
should.
should, but do they have to?
Depends on whether or not the repair was actually satisfactorily done. and even though they didn't do the repair, they weren't there when it was being done, nevertheless, they're aware of this pre-existing condition, namely a fire. My advice to them would be, under Michigan law, make the disclosure, say, hey, look, we did our due diligence when we bought, here's all of the stuff we've got. Take a look at it, have your home inspector verify that in fact the repairs have been properly accomplished.
So I wonder how that affects the value.
In this case, I don't know, the list price had come down substantially in
The one
my
you're talking
particular
about,
deal,
yes,
yeah. And I'm not sure whether that's a product of the fire, I don't know how many other people have looked at it. I did have my clients and the buyer's agent verify how long the property had been on the market. It's been on the market less than 2 months, so who knows? I don't know whether that the fire impacted value. It certainly would impact it for me personally, simply because I would be hesitant, but that I'm probably overly cautious or overly paranoid because I'm a lawyer.
Yeah, and if your wife wanted it, what would the answer be?
A happy wife is a happy husband. There's no that's an easy legal
That
question
was
to
it.
answer, right? Yeah.
Sure out of luck.
And
Yeah, right.
probably in this particular case, the house is even better as a result of the fire because it's got all new.
That's actually
it's
possible.
got a new
And
kitchen.
that's true in my case as well.
Yeah.
And that's what my clients came to the conclusion is that in fact the repairs were so well done,
Right.
and it's all new stuff, and it involved kitchen cabinets,
Right.
everything there. It was a major fire.
Yeah.
And so it's in some mess. It was a pre-1978 house, really nice house,
Mm-hmm.
but now in a lot of respects it's even better. So my paranoia is
and they
justified.
use, in this case, they've used nice quality stuff. They didn't.
Same in my client's case.
Now I don't know if their house was for sale when the fire happened. I don't know how long ago it was. I didn't look at that.
Look, I want to say one thing. One troubling aspect of the deal that we're involved in is I don't think that the buyer's agent really took this same interest in doing due diligence. I won't say where this property is. It's not in Jackson, but there is concern on the part of my clients and on myself that this was being pushed as if you don't have to worry about it. Don't do any extra due diligence. Don't do this. Don't do this. And I got the impression that it was from a buyer's agent who really wasn't looking out for the best interest of.
Well, we've had this conversation because the same couple looked at a house that was bought and flipped, and it's in a high price range. And I just gave them my opinion of homes that are purchased to flip versus something that somebody lives in and finishes.
Right. There is a difference. Somebody buys it to flip, you know that there's going to be a pretty hefty increase in the price.
Plus, they may not have used the same quality that
Right.
if you were living there that you would have used.
Right.
So those are all discussions that I've had with this particular couple. So I think we're ending 2 minutes. Anything you want to say that you didn't get in?
No, you had asked me about FSBOs, for sale by owners, but 2 minutes isn't enough time to really
No.
talk about that, either from the seller's perspective or from the buyer's perspective. Am I around next week?
Yes,
I
it's
think I am around
the day
next week, so-
before you head to Little Billy Button goes a hunting.
Right, okay. So yeah, we can leave that subject for next week.
Okay. Well, we have, let me see what we've got going here. We've got a new listing that I've already got an offer on, but take a look at it because it's a nice house. 12911 Kelly Road, which is lake access to Lake Columbia. 178.9, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. 2180 square feet, nice finished basement. I mean, this granite counters, this is a cream puff. And then we've got a price reduction at 2115 Crest, 38.9. That's a cute 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. It's only 650 square feet. However, there are no hallways in that house. They've used every square inch for living. So it's bigger than it feels. It feels bigger than it is. That's what it is. And then 619 Winifred is a short sale that's down to $30,000, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 980 square feet. And most importantly, we have 2 open houses this weekend. Real Cute Cream Puff, 3126 Pearlman, which is off Detman Road. 94.9, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 900 square feet. And then 11498 Minor Road, which is Western Schools.
Can I do a quick shout out
No.
before you get done?
158
Dick
is the
Schneider.
price. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, 1,500 square feet. And those open houses are 1 to 2:30, and I hope to see everybody there.
All right, I'm just saying hello to Dick Schneider. I haven't seen him in a month or so. Hope he's okay, and he should give me a call.